Alright, as you guys seen from my last video, breaking down the pedigrees and things, giving you guys a lot of tips on how to identify different line breedings, identify different lines of dogs within a pedigree, things like that. I kind of got into a little tangent there for a second, talking about like stud selection and things like that. Okay, so first and foremost, I know the going rate these days and anymore is to breed the best to the best. That is all fine and good. But the one thing that really gets lost in that translation there of breeding the best of the best of the best of the best is number one, we can really lose conformation. Okay, so conformation is a huge part of dog breed. Okay, so dog breeding in general, dog breeds all have a standard, all have a conformation that they should be within to adhere to that breed standard. And you know, a lot more these days, it's very common to do the X breedings and things like that, which is all fine, you know, and it's a practice that will maintain some type of validity and some type of consistency within these dogs that they might not do it the same, but they're doing it. And we just keep that hunt in those dogs by breeding the best of the best to the best, right? So there's nothing really wrong with that, but we can really stray away from the conformation of dogs. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use the two dogs that I've had most recently, and that is Cashman and that is Tilly. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to break down and look for what we would want to look for in a stud for Tilly and what we'd look for in a female for Cashman. Okay, so with the whole thing, the whole idea here behind selecting a stud, the whole idea here behind selecting a stud dog for your female is to better on that dog, right? So maybe we have a female that we really, really enjoy, we really like, and we want to select a stud to make that female that much better, okay? So when we're considering things like Tilly, right? So Tilly is kind of on a loosening up of a bloodline, right? So I have options there. The option would be to tighten her blood back up and then her puppies create an outcross. Because what can happen when we outcross an outcross is we're loosening up the gene pool too much. And one thing that can really happen here is if one dog is bred tighter than the other, meaning that the male is more line bred than the female, when we breed them together, the chances are we're going to erase a lot of that female's genetics out of the next bloodline, and the line bred line is going to be dominant in that litter of puppies. So say we have a female dog that we really enjoy the way that she hunts and enjoy the way that she acts and her temperament, etc., etc., etc. Just these kind of traits that aren't phenotypes, right? They're genotypes. Just a lot of different things like that that you're not visually seeing, but it's going on within the dog. And we outcross her to a dog, and then them pups come out just like the outcross. They don't come out like the female. So it would be a better idea to tighten that line back up and then outcross those puppies to try to maintain the original dog, right? So that is the whole idea behind the line breeding aspect. And I know I've talked a lot about line breeding, but there's so much to cover here and there's so much things to consider. So first and foremost, going back to the beginning of the video when I was talking about losing conformation, okay? So we know of Tilly, right? So myself personally, and my personal taste in the Feist dogs, I would say that Tilly has a perfect head shape. She has good ears. I like the ears. I like the head shape. I like her eye placement. I like the way that she is built. I like all of that. She has some flaws that I would like to improve upon if I were to select a stud dog and continue on this way. So when we are talking about this whole breeding for color or breeding just because or all this stuff, we're losing track of all of these things. So her feet could stand to be tightened up. Her undershot jaw could be stood to be fixed. She is a little cow hawkish in the back legs, and her rear end is a little tall, and she is about a ½ inch too tall for conformation. So with all those things considered, when I go to search out and seek out a male dog to breed to her, I want to try to shoot for bettering all these things. I'm going to look for a dog that has a lot more tighter feet, a dog that has a correct bite. I'm going to look for a dog that has a very similar head shape and physique to her, one that does not have such cow hawkish or kind of stiff back legs, and also the tighter feet and a lower a lower rear end, and also a shorter at the shoulder. So we're looking for a more streamlined dog. So one thing in the community of all dogs that tends to be a problem to get fixed is, number one, the tightness of the feet, and number two, the top line. Okay, so that is the line that is made from the nape of the neck to the hips, right? We have dips, we have high rear ends, we have high front ends. We need a good top line, right? So there's all these conformations, and this is what we need to be looking for, right? So I myself particularly think Tilly is about a 90% good on conformation, in my opinion. I think that there is some things going forward that if I were to breed her and keep on with this bloodline, and or even create my own, there are some things that I want to fix and address very soon. And at the top of the list would be top line, the top of the list would be undershot jaw, top of the list would be feet, and then we can go on and keep tightening up the conformation on this side of things. But the big thing in here is going to be the hunt. Okay, so that she could stand to get a lot more fired up. So a dog that has a lot of go power would be a good mix with her for the puppies to have a good chance of being what I want to produce, right? So that is the whole idea. And even though I know of all these things about Tilly, or these things are unsatisfactory of her, I still believe that she is a fantastically awesome looking dog. I think she is almost very well put together. She is up there with some of the better looking dogs that I've seen of her breed, and with those faults included, right? So there's not much to be improved on, but there is stuff to be improved on. And like I was talking about, tightening the lineup and then loosening it back up with the outcross, that are all things that you need to be aware of. Okay, so the biggest issue that we can create by making a line too tight is you were doubling up bad genetics, right? So let's say that she has an underlying health condition, or the male that we select has an underlying health condition, but she doesn't. We breed them together. We have just now introduced a underlying health condition into the bloodline, or different bad traits or whatever. And it's kind of just like the breeding the best of the best together. Let's breed two high hip dogs together. The puppies are going to be high hipped. Let's breed two, cowhawk dogs with their feet are sitting like this together. When their puppies come out, don't be surprised if their feet are even worse off. Or their feet are loose, and we breed two loose-feeted dogs together, and they come out and their feet are really loose, or splayed feet, I would say. That's the correct terminology. And there's all these things like that can go along with the breeding selection. So if we're taking bad traits, if we're taking bad traits and we're breeding them together, that would be a phenotype, what you can see visually with your eyes. If we're taking bad phenotypes and we're breeding them together, we're going to put out more bad phenotypes. And then on the inside of the dog, genetically, we are going to be putting together more bad genetics, right? So who knows what comes along with the splayed feet? Who knows what comes along with any of these things, right? Who knows, really, what we're carrying on. And a lot of guys want to do testing. They have all these genetic tests that you can do on dogs these days. I don't think it is so much necessary unless you are it is a really big deal in breeding for color. Okay, so if we're not breeding for color, which a lot of these dogs have multitudes of different color patterns and things like that, but we have to be pay attention to and be aware of things like dominant traits, right? So like really dominant colors that are predominant within dogs. So one in particular for the Feist dogs that is a really predominant color is just the solid copper color, right? Like the solid red copper tone dogs. Okay, so for me, when I see that, I know that those are kind of hard to defeat, and those are hard to get away from, especially because they're so dominantly traded, right? So just as a in general kind of thing, and what that is very vaguely remnant of is probably like a miniature pincher or something like that, right? So when we see these solid tone dogs, solid coated dogs, those genes are very strong and they might throw over everything, right? So one thing that I really enjoy about Tilly is her color and is her patterning. Okay, so from what I've understood, this has come down from Cool Whip, and you will see these litters that are throwing solid copper dogs, and then they'll throw these white and red dogs, right? Or these solid red dogs and then these white and red dogs. Which is all just in preference, it's all just in taste. But I know when we get into breeding these copper tone dogs together so much, what was going to end up happening is we're basically not going to throw anything but that color, so we won't have color variants, and that would be getting into bifurcating off into your own type of breed of dog or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like we have things that we want, and we need to consider all things. Now, would I prefer to have a dog throw better color than a better conformation dog? Absolutely not. I would throw whatever is going to be the best for conformation, and in that case, that's going to go into the stud dog search list, right? So color is not a thing, and then we're looking more specifically for some good phenotypes, some good physical characteristics that will fix any issues going forward with her bloodline, and we will also look for any genetic fixes that we might see, or genetic flaws that we might see within her, even though we think our dog's perfect, even though I don't think there's anything wrong with her, just for the sake of being nitpicky, just for the sake of bettering on and making things better, we have to be aware of these things. Okay, so that was kind of like picking a stud dog. One thing that we really want to make sure of is, like I said, is we don't want to have a dog that is so well line bred to come in and completely cover up everything that was going on before, all the breeding prior, all our breeding prior, because that can actually happen. Let's say that we have spent 20 years developing a line of dogs, we outcross it, our line of dogs is now genetically in the past, and we're now just breeding on some dominant traits out of another line. So we have to pay attention to these things, and that goes on to rearing puppies up until a older age before we get rid of them. What we can do, and I've heard a lot of guys, especially in the coonhound world, of doing is letting dogs run and just picking the first one that does anything. That is a good way to maintain a solid trajectory and isolating genes. Okay, so you're not going to get a deviant of that gene, but along with that comes a lot of different things that could possibly happen, and we might be able to get that gene so dominant that we can braid it over everything and always produce at least one of these dogs that are genetically this way. Doing things that way, number one, it makes things super easily erasable. Okay, so it makes things super easily erasable. If we have gene isolated just one specific gene, we don't care about conformation, we don't care about color, we don't care about size, we don't care about nothing. We have a gigantic gene pool that goes along with this one trait, and all it takes is one of these plethora of this gigantic gene pool to come in and erase that, and it's gone and lost forever. And that is kind of the issue of doing things this way, of breeding the best of the best of the best of the best, is that all we're doing is we're just kind of focusing in on one specific gene isolation, and we're creating a bigger, broader gene pool that eventually something could come in there and wipe that gene out, right? So that is just kind of the thought process behind all of this. So there's a lot to be considered when selecting stud dogs. So let's talk about selecting a female to breed for your male. Okay, so i.e. number one, the person who has the female, or if you have your own female, they have to want to be able, you have to have a desirable male to breed. Okay, so right off rip, it is a lot harder to fix a male's genetics, because you have to seek out a female, and then that person has to also want to breed your male. Let's say we have a really goofy looking male and he's just not conformation at all. It is going to be kind of hard to find somebody that wants to breed a good conformation dog to that, right? So we have to kind of start with a good male to begin with when we're talking about breeding males, and in trying to carry on that without obtaining our own female to breed him to. And we kind of get scapegoated into that, and a lot of the time it comes with the conformation that goes with these male bloodlines, right? So the conformation really just kind of suffers at that, because a lot of people will just make poor choices and go, yeah, he might be 10 inches too tall and 100 pounds bigger than what he's supposed to be, but he's really good at hunting. We're going to breed our dog. And then there goes all the conformation out the window. Or, oh, his ears are super short, or whatever the case may be. A lot of people will bend the knee and go ahead and breed to a bad conformation male for the fact that he hunts better than their female, or that he is a well-to-do kind of dog in that sense. So we have to select for more than just hunting. We have to select for conformation as well, because we want to produce healthy, good-looking dogs going forward. Because what last thing that we want to do is have this fantastic gene isolation going on within this male line, or within these male populations, and it's very sought after, but it gets so out of hand that they're no longer remotely closely like conforming to that breed, and then nobody will want to breed it, and then there goes all that genetic isolation work gone. So we want to make sure that we're adhering to that, right? So for our males looking for a female, it's going to be the same exact case as looking for a male dog to breed, but there's kind of a difference. If we're not owning the female, it is kind of hard to go ahead and reach in there and pluck out one dog and be like, this is actually the dog that I wanted to breed for. And that's why when we're talking about actually growing a line and creating a line, we need to keep on to a litter of dogs for a while. You know, it's going to be a good long time before you can actually weed out the correct ones and pick the ones that you actually kind of want to pick. And it kind of goes the same way for both. But in the first case, we own the female. The second case, we don't own the female, or maybe we do, but we're owning, you know, adult dogs, and we're owning puppies, and we're owning all this thing. So it's a lot of work. But when we're selecting a male, or we have a male and we're selecting a female to breed to, number one, we need to make sure that their conformation is correct. We need to make sure that their lineage, okay? So one thing, like I was just talking about, the issue with having a female dog is if we have a loosely bred dog or a scatterbred dog, and then we come in and we slap it over with a very good line bred dog, we're going to lose the dog that was kind of loosely bred. And if we're taking a male that is a scatterbred male and we're breeding it to a line bred female, the chances are we're not going to reproduce this dog. We're just going to continue on adding to whatever line existed. And that is just to do with gene pools and genetics. So especially in the male side of things, we want to make sure that the female is bred relatively as tight as the male. We want to make sure that if there are two different lines coming together, we're making a cross. We kind of want to make sure that they are kind of genetically the same of two different families. So we're not taking a scatterbred dog and breeding it to a super tight bred line bred dog or something like that. We can do that to tighten up this side, but at the end of the day, we're just kind of milling around and checking paperwork and doing that kind of thing in the female world, unless we're just a stud dog in general. So if you're a stud dog and you're just out there breeding to each and everything, if you want to maintain a good producing line off of a male dog, number one, you need to make sure that you have a genetically solid male. Okay, so the best way to have a dog that is genetically solid, that is going to throw genetics, that will reproduce over other things, is to make sure that they are very well bred, they are very well put together. So a lot of the times what is going to happen here is we'll have a dog that is tightened all the way up, right? Because that's how it works. We tighten the bloodline up, we outcross it, and then we tighten it back up, and then we outcross it, and then we tighten it back up. So when we have a dog that is at the nose of this thing, where he is at the tightest of the tight that we want to go with our bloodline, this is the dog that we want to stud. This is the dog that we want to breed over. This is the dog that we want to cross out, because he is the most of what we are seeking. And this is the dog that's going to give us the best chance of reproducing what we want to reproduce. Now, when we are scatterbred, or we're in the midst of loosening a dog's bloodline up, yes, we can still breed out and cross out, but what we're doing is we're diverging off of the original idea, and we can get something totally new. We can get something totally different. And with that being said, sometimes it is a good idea to breed a loosely bred dog, or a dog that is not as tightly bred as the nose of this thing, but as kind of has genetic options and room there for another line to come in and give it something that it was missing, that we can go back and reincorporate it in, right? So that is kind of how this all plays out and how this all works. And I know a lot of guys were looking for stud dogs, and I know a lot of guys were looking into trying to, breed on and go on forward. It is all fine and good to just breed to a dog that you really like, if we're not so worried about the genetics, and we're not so worried about creating a line or preserving a line, so we can kind of breed to what we want to breed. But the options at the other end of that, what you get as a product of that, it might not be so consistent. It might not be something that is reproducible. It might not be something that is even what you want or remotely close to what you thought that you were going to get, right? So we can just delete all the traits that we like out of our dog and end up with something whole new that we're not completely unfamiliar with. We could end up with things that are exactly the same. We could end up with doubled up on bad stuff. We can just, this is the game that is played in the game of breeding. And that's why it is kind of like a necessity to cull. It is a necessity to pet homes. It's a necessity to spay or neuter dogs that are of lineage that you're creating going forward, to make sure that, number one, they don't muddy up the reputation of your blood. Number two, there might be bad traits carried within your blood that you are calling out and you don't want to carry forward. And the easiest way to do that is to spay and neuter, or is to rehome to a pet home that is not going to breed. And you only keep the stock and only breed stock that you know is healthy, that you know is genetically good and sound and isn't passing on these bad traits. And it's kind of like you wouldn't breed two blind dogs together, and you wouldn't breed two deaf dogs together. You wouldn't breed, two cripple dogs together. You wouldn't do that kind of thing, because the chances of you throwing that, the chances of you producing that goes up. So if we break a line breeding together and some bad stuff comes out of that, we need to get rid of that bad, and hopefully something good came out of that. Or we need to just scrap that whole litter, not keep anything, get a whole new breeding done, and see if they threw the good, right? So when they throw the good, keep the good. When they throw the undesirable, get rid of the undesirable. And that will help you isolate and maintain a bloodline going forward. So Cash was way too tall for me. Cash was definitely high in the rear, definitely cowhawked. Just a lot of things about him that were conformationally okay, but in my preference was not okay, right? So within standard, but not within my standard, if that makes sense. I'd like to have him have a lot more longer ears, a longer face, things like that. Just some things that are easily fixable. But one thing that is not easily fixable is taking a line of dogs that is bred to specifically look like what Cashman is looked like, and be reproducible. It is going to be kind of hard to find a female that is going to get rid of that. And so then we talk about, options of getting new males or new females to get something closer to what we actually like. And that's why we should start there. But I hope y'all like this video. I hope it's not too much cramming in one session, especially after the last video was a 40-minute video. But you know what, you guys, y'all keep them treed. I hope you guys have a great, wonderful time out there in the world of learning about the line breeding and learning about reading pedigrees and breedings and all this whole thing. It is a lot of really good knowledge to have, and when we look at papers and we're aware of all this knowledge, we can kind of have an idea, right? We can kind of have an idea genetically what our dog may be capable of, just by that. But for that, y'all keep them treed.